of Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission meeting, recorded September 6, 2022.
Okay, it's 2 o'clock on Tuesday, September 6th. I am calling to order the Police and Fire Commission. Welcome, everyone. Sarah, thank you for being here. Leanne, could you call the roll?
Kirschling.
Here.
Moore.
Here.
Ostrowski.
Here.
Rozek. Here. Taylor.
Here.
Everyone's present and accounted for. Agenda item number 2 is approval of the minutes of last month's meeting. Anyone?
I motion to approve the meetings from August 10, 2022.
Second, Rozek.
Seconded by Morozek. Any questions or comments? It was quite a nice lengthy report. But it was very complete and accurate. Thank you, Leanne. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 3, which is the confirmation of bills. Mr. Ostrowski, if you will.
Alrighty, went over them, reviewed them for you. Ambulance, no questions pop out in my mind. Fire department, similar. They all are within reason. Police department has one big one. That's an annual fee of $10,149. Totally normal. It's in line with everything. And so with that, I just remind my fellow commissioners to always take the running totals and add the current one to it to see where our departments are presently at. And in my review, they are right in line. So with that, I would recommend approval of the bills as submitted.
Kirschling, second.
Okay, we have a second, a motion and a second. Any questions or comments about budgets? Bills? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 4 is discussion with possible action on the use and evaluation of exit interview materials. Continuation from last month, and I'm sure we'll be dealing with this for a little while yet. Denise?
Yes, I've worked with Chief Cuso, and he's been very instrumental in creating the information in regards to reaching out to other departments. And we've come to find out that police stations throughout Wisconsin with the PFC, they don't have, there's not one that has a PFC that actually attends the exit interviews. But with that said, I think that we've, those of us who have attended the exit interviews have gotten, some good valuable information that definitely is feedback to the department heads. So after kind of reviewing everything, I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to have a motion to create the policy of exit interviews with the police and fire department to include the exit interview questionnaires is facilitated through the HR department, and the HR department will maintain the records on it. Okay? And that's pretty standard throughout all the police and fire departments, that HR is the record keeper. And I would like to still see 2 police and fire commissioners be invited to attend the exit interview, to listen, with the sole purpose is to be able to provide that continued feedback to the department heads, as they deem necessary. Because I think that there is some valuable takeaway that is there. And I know that both chiefs have expressed the continued interest in knowing where they're succeeding at and knowing where there's potential room for improvement, or if we're having staff that are leaving, due to, I could say 2 examples, salary or, burnout. I think that that's important too, so that can facilitate some further discussions. So that's the motion that I'd like to put out there. And
Could you clarify that motion a little bit for us, please?
I think if the motion is, if we could simplify to create the policy of exit interviews with the police and fire department, HR facilitates it, maintains records. 2 police and fire commissioners will attend. to listen and provide feedback to department heads.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a second by Kirschling. Any comments or questions?
I guess how's that different from what we're doing right now? Is HR not storing and conducting these exit interviews?
It'd be more formal.
It'd be more formal?
Yeah,
Right.
it'd be a policy that would be put forth, because right now there's no policy.
So we're just doing it de facto right now, or ad hoc, but it would actually, okay.
We're actually going to create a policy that goes into the Police and Fire Commission policies and procedures so that we can establish that and let future commissions know that
This is an expectation of how we
Yes.
do business, okay,
And that we are not the record holders of it.
Correct.
It is,
in HR.
right, because that's where we were kind of feeling it out to what direction we wanted to go with it, and that seems to make the most sense, that HR maintains those records. And
Is there any questions or comments from the audience? Any questions or
Who
comments?
would create that policy? Would that be a combination of Logan and,
We'll create it right here, and we'll have an example that we'll bring back next month for approval,
okay,
that will make sure that it gets created and approved. We'll have the city attorney take a look at it to make sure it meets statutory requirements, all of those things. So we do have a motion and a second. All in favor, if there's no more questions, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 5, presentation of full-time CSO position and discussion with possible action starting nighttime CSO. Chief.
Thank you. This was actually brought to my attention by Lieutenant Johnson, who oversees our CSOs, which are our community service officers. They're in charge of parking enforcement. And we just had an individual who was hired and worked approximately a month and then resigned because another job opportunity came along. He had requested that we look at starting a CSO as a full-time individual here with benefits. And so I actually brought Lieutenant Johnson here to kind of talk about why we made that decision and who we spoke to see if this is something that'd be feasible to do at the department. Lieutenant Johnson.
Thanks for having me. So like Chief Cuso said, our CSOs are mainly responsible for parking enforcement, but they also have other responsibilities such as bike inventories, abandoned bikes around town. They deal with fingerprints. They also deal with, they fill in for crossing guards when we have a shortage, which has been quite a bit lately. And then also they assist patrol with odds and ends, traffic control, stuff like that. So they're quite useful to be around. However, because of whether it's the hours or the pay, we've had a fair amount of turnover recently. I think since 2017, we've hired approximately 17 part-time CSOs, which is a fair amount of turnover. The reasons for them leaving vary anywhere from odd hours to the job description to the pay, so on and so forth. I know this one recently that we just employed. She was here for a month and then she took a job for better pay. She wanted the part-time position. She liked the hours. The job wasn't quite what she was looking for. And the amount of training that goes into getting one of these people prepped for this position before they can go on their own is quite a bit. And to task our current part-time CSOs with having to train people on a monthly basis has become quite a task for them. And I can't imagine that they enjoy doing it that often. So the idea isn't necessarily a new one, because previously, before we had part-time CSOs, we had a full-time CSO position. And that position was filled, I don't know how long Carol was here, 30-some years. So Carol Grubuk was employed here for 30-some years in that position. So the retention then, we didn't ever have to deal with it. And so then when we created these part-time positions, that's when we started dealing with the turnover. So the idea is to maybe get back to how we used to have it. We currently have 4 part-time CSOs. 3 of those CSOs work during the day between the hours of 7 and 5. They do an hour overlap generally. We only have 2 of those CSOs working currently because we've been holding off on filling the middle one for this proposal. So the idea would still be to have one part-time CSO that works our night shift position that enforces our alternate inside and overnight parking enforcement. However, the 3 full-time CSO positions, or I'm sorry, the 3 part-time day shift CSO positions could potentially be eliminated for 1 full-time CSO position. That CSO then would work any time between the hours of 7 and 5 on an 8-hour shift, Monday through Friday, under full-time benefits and a full-time hourly rate that's decided by the city and by Kerry. Obviously, there's a bunch of benefits for us. We hopefully can eliminate turnover, longevity of the job, keep somebody employed here that then becomes a useful or more useful member of the department. Maybe we can give more jobs, responsibilities too. I know certain ideas have been thrown around about potential code violation identification where we can forward that to the correct departments. We can use them a little bit more on patrol. And also, obviously, it would be a better pay position, so it's maybe a little more desirable for somebody who's looking to be here long-term. I think the rate of pay that we decided is enough to let somebody support a family or a couple at least, and then obviously the benefits is a huge thing as well. But then we also get into the consistency of work. Currently with the part-time CSOs, they're all a little bit different. We get a lot of complaints about how one is enforcing parking restrictions as opposed to another. So if we have one person doing it on a regular basis, we could potentially eliminate the differences there. So it's to us, it looks good on paper, it makes sense, and that's just why we brought it forward to you guys. So, does anybody have any questions?
Lieutenant, did you say we would be going to 1 full-time and 1 part-time?
Correct, yeah.
At night?
Yeah, so we currently pay for 80 hours of part-time CSO, that's what we're budgeted for. We would go down to 60, so we'd have 1 full-time, which is 40 hours a week, and 1 part-time, which is still 20 hours a week.
The part-time at night, what hours do they have?
Which works 2 to 6, 2 a.m. to 6 a.m.
Any other questions? Chief, would you like to add anything?
The only thing I'd like to add is what we're looking for is your approval to start a full-time community service officer at grade G, step 2, that we can bring to committees next Monday. That is the wage that the city treasurer, Carrie Freeberg, identified as the starting pay and what grade it would be at. And so that's why we're requesting your approval today.
Okay. And this is a non-sworn position? This is just a
Correct, it's a civilian position.
civilian position. Any other questions?
Not I. I'll make a motion to hire 1 full-time community service officer for the Stevens Point Police Department.
I would second that.
Okay, did you get
Do
that,
we need to
Leanne?
have the grade G, step 2 in that approval at all?
That would be, would you like to add that, Joe?
Yeah,
Is
I'll
that
add
fine?
that
Okay.
it's grade G, step 2,
Do you need approval
with
for the
full-time
nighttime?
benefits.
Or are we good with that?
No,
Okay.
we're fine with the nighttime.
Okay.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Do we have any further questions or comments? Any questions or comments from the audience? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, the motion carries. Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 6, discussion with possible action moving forward with the therapy dog for the police department. Chief Kuso.
We've been talking about this for some time. I know that the fire department just actually had gotten their 2 therapy canines as well. We're looking for, again, formal approval from the Police and Fire Commission to move forward with obtaining a therapy dog starting next year, 2023. The cost of the dog, it is actually going to be donated, if you approve of it, through Blueberry Cottages Labradoodles from Osseo. The training costs actually will be covered without any issues at all. It's approximately $2,500 to train a handler. And I talked to Positively Unleashed. What we'd like to do is train just not the 1 handler, but 2 additional handlers for that therapy dog, because it is a tool. It can be used throughout the entire city of Stevens Point, and obviously anybody that needs it. And when an individual who becomes the primary handler is gone on vacation, we'd like that dog to still be accessible to us. And so we'd like to have 2 more handlers trained. But again, the total cost of the training will be $2,500 at the max. That we can cover in our training budget, or we can get donations throughout the year for that training as well. There is a stipend that we pay the canine officers. That stipend, I went through the budget, operational budget with the 2 assistant chiefs. We were able to find that stipend in there and move some things around, so that would be covered as well. So this would be at no cost at all to the community. We would actually take it on within the police department. So we are looking for your formal approval to obtain a therapy dog for the Stevens Point Police Department in 2023.
Are there any insurance, anything you need to do with insurance for that?
It is covered under the same as our canine.
Okay.
We also talked to the vet. The vet is willing to offer the same services as they do for our canines. The individual that we receive food from cannot provide any more food, but one of our canine handlers reached out to another organization and they're willing to donate the food as well.
Nice.
Chief, are these, this type of dog, is it different than our regular canines in that it's kind of a department animal rather than the handler? It doesn't stay with the handler necessarily.
Correct. This is going to be a therapy dog, and JB would actually probably be able to answer that better than me. So our canines, we have dual purpose canines that are trained in location of drugs, tracking, and apprehension. This dog is actually there just to be loved.
Mm-hmm.
So the training for the handler is not as extensive. The majority of the training is actually for obedience training for the dog. We would just like to have it available to us at all times, because you never know when something terrible is going to happen. And if the primary handler has gone on vacation for 2 weeks and something terrible happens, we want to make sure that we have that dog available, either to the public or to the department within.
Where would this animal be housed?
It would be at the primary handler's residence. That's why they receive a stipend.
Any further questions? Do we have a motion?
I would make a motion, we accept the thought of a therapy dog for the police department as submitted by the chief.
Taylor seconds.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve. Any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to agenda item number 7, Chief Kuso, Police Chief's Report.
Alrighty. The good news is September 13th, they are going to be starting our parking lot here at the Stevens Point Police Department. And they will be finished
right?
September 30th. So on September 13th is the only day that nobody will be able to park in the lot. They're going to have to do some pulverizing and stuff like that, but after that, they're going to work with us on where we can park and where we can't park. Some notes of interest, we did just sign up 2 fall interns with the department. Kylie is actually our nighttime CSO here. She is going to Fox Valley Tech for criminal justice, and she is one of our interns for fall. And another one that we've got is Macy, and she goes to MSTC, and she's currently a full-time Wood County Corrections Officer. If you look down on the 19th of August, a lot of us participated in Cops on the Rooftop. It's a fundraiser for Special Olympics. Lieutenant Johnson's the one who actually set that up. And between us and the Plover Dunkin' Donuts, we were able to raise $2,000 for Special Olympics, which is a really, really good cause. Our record specialist, Stacy Sprita, welcomed her son, Elton Stone, to the world, and so she's doing well and the baby's doing as well. We also, within our department, and from individuals that have worked here in the past, one of the things that we've dealt with is cancer, all different types and forms of cancer. And so it was brought to my attention, actually I think by Assistant Chief Williams, about maybe offering or allowing the officers to wear pink badges in the month of October for breast cancer. And so I approved that. And so we offered, they have to buy it themselves, but they can wear it every October. And so this October you'll see, I think 10 or 11 officers that will be wearing pink badges in support of individuals that are suffering from breast cancer. Sam Hessel, One of our newer officers successfully completed step 1 and is in step 2. And as you all know, Officer Cole O'Neill was placed on permanent status on the 22nd of August. And Assistant Chief Williams has completed her first week of command college.
Nice.
And that is about it for us.
Alrighty. I'll make a motion to accept the report and place it on file.
Second, Morozek.
Seconded by Morozek. Any questions or comments on the chief's report today? It's good to see that Assistant Chief is still smiling after the first week. Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving right along. Agenda item number 8, discussion and possible action. Long-term agreement with the Village of Park Ridge for fire protection. Chief Moody, your side of the table.
Sure. So, as you all know, we've all agreed upon an agreement with the Village of Park Ridge from July 1st through the end of this year as a short-term contract and affixed to provide fire suppressions for the Village of Park Ridge. Going through that agreement, we did that through a blended formula, knowing how many fire inspections they had in their area, and then additionally adding a percentage on top of that for a cost of doing business. President Menzel from the Village of Park Ridge has reached out to me and asked if we can look at doing a long-term contract with the Village of Park Ridge. There are currently 3 options that he put out in a newsletter to the Village of Park Ridge. One being that the Village of Park Ridge Fire Department would come back into active status as of January 1, 2023. Moving forward and continuing the fire service in a fire service agreement with the City of Stevens Point, or going with the Town Hall in 2023. With that, they're looking for an agreement or what our long-term contract would look like. My recommendation is that we look at the agreement that we have already set up with the Village of Park Ridge, but then also to include 2% dues that were taken out of the original agreement. Reason being is because those 2% dues were already used up for the year, and we agreed to that. But next year, we would ask that those 2% dues be included into that agreement. From there, we would use the blended formula, the inspections, the total, a 10% charge for the cost of doing business, and then include in the contract, and I talked to the comptroller's office, a 3% increase in 2024 and a 3% increase in 2025. My recommendation is that we do a 2.5-year contract. Reason being is it would start January 1st of 2023 and it would end May 31st of 2025. The reason being that last year we would prorate the through May 31st. We have 2 other current contracts that are running parallel with the Village of Park Ridge. One is with water and utilities, and the other is the EMR service that we are providing the Village of Park Ridge through our fire department for EMS assists. What I would like to do is in 2025 incorporate that EMR response and the fire service into one contract. And then we would also be able to, over the next 2.5 years, while we have this long-term contract in place, be able to talk with the Village of Park Ridge and look at what the infrastructure would look like as far as roadways and utilities with the water department. I've also had conversations with both department heads in the city on that, and that would give us time then in order to look at potentially the next 5-year contract from 2025 to 2030 and what that would look like for the Village of Park Ridge.
Questions?
We're a little skinny on staff. Are you okay with the levels that we're at with adding this extra responsibility? looking at the call volume for the Village of Park Ridge and going not only with the call volume that we have had so far since taking over the contract, but going backwards and looking at the last 5 years worth of data, I am comfortable saying that we can support this contract moving forward.
Okay. You might have addressed this in your presentation there, but what about facilities and equipment for Park Ridge?
So the facilities and equipment that Park Ridge currently has, we would evaluate what we would be able to use
Okay.
out of that equipment, and the rest of it, the village can dispense of at their discretion. So anything that meets these NFPA standards, we would obviously want to take a look at and potentially onboard into our department. The rest of it, they could get rid of it as they see fit. And we would put that in the contract as well.
What about facilities? Any use there?
Facilities, they're not interested at this point in having anything housed within their current fire department location, and we're okay with that at this point.
Okay.
And Chief, you said we're going 10% over the blended
Yes.
dollar amount. Can you just explain the thought process behind the blended versus the equalized value?
So the blended formula, what I'm being told by the comptroller's office, there's 3 options on the table, and I apologize, give me a minute. There is a per capita cost, an equalized value cost, and a blended cost. And the comptroller's office is saying we want to be able to give the service to the Village of Park Ridge for what our members of the city of Stevens Point are getting it for. And the comptroller's office is saying that the closest to that is the blended formula. So what our city people are paying for the fire department services is as close to the blended formula as possible. So we used that for the Village of Park Ridge and then added that 10%.
And is 10%, I know you've done some research on that too with other communities, is that the norm for, because the thing of it is, I know we've had discussions, is that living in Park Ridge has its benefits, and as far as tax, the mill rate. And we want to make sure that we're not just giving our services away, right, to Park Ridge.
Correct.
For the same value that the citizens of Stevens Point and our taxpayers pay. So when you say the 10% above that, I guess I'm asking, is that the norm that's within, I'm sure you've reached out to other communities who have, or is this, I guess the 10%, tell me where that is.
There is no real norm.
Okay.
So some people go off the mill rates, and actually the town hall is actually going to use the mill rate for their proposal, and you can see that in the village's newsletter. I've talked to other departments and how they contract it, and it is all over the board. Some do percentages, some do mill rates, some do, and what I looked at is we went as close as what the citizens of the Stevens Point are getting the same services for, and then what we did was the cost of business on top of that, and where our operational budget is going to increase and where we're seeing that cost of business go up. So we went with 10% over the top. And then talking with the comptroller's office, the 3 and 3 with 2024 and 2025, that was a recommendation from their office directly.
Chief, I think you just mentioned this initial contract would be a 2.5-year contract?
Correct. It would
And what would it be after that?
a 5-year.
Okay.
So right now, currently, the Village of Park Ridge has 2 other contracts with us. They have a water utility contract, and they have a EMR services that we provide. So outside the county EMS contract, where we provide an ambulance into their area through the county contract, the city of Stevens Point on critical calls provides an engine assist and provides the first responders for that area through that EMR contract. That's a 5-year contract as well. both of those set to expire in 2025. And that's why I would like to just do a 2.5-year contract on this and then negotiate all 3 contracts at the same time. Hopefully being able to incorporate the fire suppression and the EMR contract into one, and then also just have then a second utilities contract.
I'd like to propose a hypothetical thought to you. If Park Ridge is what, 240 buildings, 200 and some buildings?
Population between 400 and 600 people. I'm not sure how many buildings.
If we were to add that many structures in Stevens Point, how much more manpower would you need at your station? And you can see where I'm heading.
Right, and my answer to that would be depending on where the geographical area would be. With where that's located, if that would be the subdivision for that area, Station 1 can service that area and meet the time requirements. And with the size of growth and knowing what the call volume is going to be in that area, again, I can say that I would be comfortable with that.
Because I will say, I got some concerns about adding that many structures at a time when we're adding an awful lot of apartment buildings and everything else in our community, yet our department, I don't remember changing in size since Genza had black hair instead of gray, you know. So I do have some concerns about that.
Correct, and we are definitely running lean right now, and we're going to continue to run lean, and hopefully we can get that corrected. But again, like Chief Cuso knows, there was a plan in place to add positions to both of our departments. That has not moved forward at this point, and hopefully with that would help us out as well. But yeah, right now that is a concern.
And is there, I would assume we would get a tentative contract submitted to us ahead of time for us to study before we'd be asked to vote on it.
Correct.
Thank you.
And just so you're aware, the inspections would increase about, I just did the numbers, about 2%. So we currently do 1,503 inspections annually, and this would increase our numbers. Another 32 buildings would have to be inspected throughout the year.
That's providing we get a new fire marshal.
Correct.
Thank you, Chief. You answered my questions.
Chief, does this meet our requirements for a November 1st notice deadline? What President Menzel said to you? Because we had it written to the short-term contract to notify us by November 1st, as I recall.
Yes and no. He has not notified the Police and Fire Commission. He has notified the mayor and he has talked to you, but we have received nothing in writing as far as I know of.
Sounds good.
Have you gotten anything?
No.
So I would expect a letter from Mr. Menzel notifying us that he's interested in a long-term contract. Chief, another question from you, for you is, it's no surprise to anyone that the road structures in Park Ridge are less than well-kept at this point in time. That has the potential to cause a lot of wear and tear on our very pricey vehicles. Who is liable for that, and how is it provable if anything happens to them? Because you didn't mention anything in the contract about insurance or anything protecting our vehicles and all that kind of stuff.
So for our apparatuses, the Stevens Point Fire Department, we would be responsible for that. On their end, the roadways or surfaces or any damage that we cause to provide that fire suppression is on them. And that's how the current contract, short-term contract, is written.
And that will continue into this contract?
Correct.
Okay.
Unless the commissioners see fit to change that.
Chief Cuso, how much response does the city do in Park Ridge as far as police goes?
We travel through there, and if we're close, we'll assist them for mutual aid. But other than that,
Okay. What are you looking for from this body tonight, Chief, this afternoon?
I'm looking for a recommendation to be able to sit down with President Menzel after he contacts the PFC to discuss the terms of a long-term agreement, and what that would look like.
So it's just basically to create one that would have to come back for approval.
Correct, because once I sit down with President Menzel and we get this agreement put together with our city attorney and village attorney, it would have to come back in front of the PFC, it would have to go in front of Common Council and in front of their village board for approval before anything could be ratified or put into place.
Okay.
And is it the November date that they have to notify us if they're going to proceed with wanting another contract? Is that correct?
There or before, correct. And I think that's why President Menzel's already reached out, is he's looking to get this done sooner rather than later. Dealing with operational and capital budgets like we all are, we know through the city, ours are approved and finalized in October and November. So I'm assuming the village would be in the same boat.
President Moore, do you need a vote from us on this, or can we just?
I would think a motion would be appropriate to continue forward or something to that effect in establishing a contract that they could bring back for approval.
But I would say it's gotta be pending President Menzel contacting the PFC.
Absolutely.
That's gotta be the first step in it, because we can't move ahead without that.
We could just wait till he contacts us, or do you want to make the motion now to give him the freedom to? Oh, I see what it is, okay.
You could make the motion
think you
that
make,
once
yeah.
he contacts us, that gives JB the authority to.
So you can start out the gates right away.
Right.
Yeah, because it's not our responsibility to ask for a form from them. It's their responsibility to request our services.
I motion that in the event that the Village of Park Ridge's president reaches out to the Police and Fire Commission, that Chief Moody has the ability to explore the terms for a long-term contract,
Create.
create terms.
Create a long-term contract for approval by the necessary bodies of the Stevens Point government, something to that effect.
Yeah, so motion?
I'll second that.
Nicely played.
Gershling second.
Okay, do we have any further questions on this issue?
Leanne, do you have that motion?
I do.
Okay,
I will go back and look at the tape.
okay.
Just to make sure. Thank you.
Very well done. Do we have any further questions? I'm sorry. Anyone? Okay, the motion before us is for Mr. Menzel to formally contact the Stevens Point Police and Fire Commission requesting a long-term contract, which Chief Moody can then develop and bring back for the appropriate approvals through the Stevens Point City Government. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving right along. Agenda item number 9, discussion with possible action, LMA, LMI proposal. Chief Moody. And by popular request, please explain what LMI, LMA means.
So, this was something that former Chief Finn and former union presidents Glenn Novak and Ben Molnar were working on together. But LMA, LMI is a labor management technical assistance program or initiative program, just depending on which one we are going to use, and I will explain the difference. But what it basically is it's designed, so LMA, LMI. LMI is a 4-day course that goes over and briefly discusses labor management issues that potentially could be going on within an organization, and having a general overview and going through things not specific to a department, but potentially what labor management looks like, how to proceed through things, and how to potentially make things more harmonious within your department, create a better culture, and that aspect. The other side of this is a LMA, and LMA is instead of the initiative program, this is an assistance program. And it's a technical assistance designed for a specific fire department experiencing an acute challenge within the department. So it's a specific problem within that department that they want addressed. That is a 2-day course that would be discussed, discussing just the acute challenges facing that current department. With that, the powers that be at the time discussed doing or thought it was best that we look into or investigate the opportunity to do an LMI process within the department. With great discussion from the IAFF, International Association of Firefighters, and the IAFC, International Association of Fire Chiefs, and representatives from both, along with the chief of the department at that time and the union presidents. They felt it was more appropriate to work through an LMA process, which would be a 2-day course dealing with acute problems within the department and address those specifically. Through this transpired late in 2020 and into 2021. Correspondence going back and forth. And in the end, there was an application submitted July 30th of 2021. The fire department contact was Robert J. Finn, and the union contact was Ben Molnar. The application was submitted for LMA. It was going to be hosted at a neutral site, the city community room. And the top 3 challenges or issues facing the department that the LMA was going to address directly was the manning and overtime issues, the anonymous letters that were sent, along with the Ed Reed report, and recruitment retention. Those were the topics that were challenging the department at that time and what was going to be addressed. With that, we also then, going through the process, had to pick facilitators to actually come in and address these issues within the department. And we had selected those individuals. We also were working with Chief Wolf from the International Association of Firefighters and Elizabeth Del Rey from the International Association of Firefighters. And through the process came up with what we were going to discuss, and we were looking, going back looking for final approval with PFC at that time. There was no set direction. We had held it in abeyance until we could get a direction. But with that, I'd also like to point out that through this, President Molnar received information that the typical 2-day cost for the 2 facilitators and travels and materials was around $7,000. And then we would also be expected to pay expenses for anything else that occurred during that time. The people that would be involved in this LMA process would be the management staff of the City of Stevens Point Fire Department and Local 484, the executive board only. So we would be looking at, currently we have 3 chief officers and the executive board has 4 members. So it would be a 7 people total in this 2-day course. that is the highlights of what LMA, LMI is and where we're at with the process. I know it's been put on hold and I know it's being discussed today.
Chief, you mentioned 3 issues. What was the second one?
The letters, the anonymous letters.
So the second issue was anonymous letters and the Ed Reed report.
Okay, thank you.
Chief, all those numbers for the cost expense, those were developed in 2020 or 2021?
Those costs, specifically just to the facilitators coming and the materials involved for the 2 days was $7,000, and that was in 2021.
So are they still valid now? or
I would guess probably not. I would have to go back to I would have to go back to the union president, Justin Thompson, who's currently the union president, and work with him and our rep from the IAFF and then the IAFC, see what the new cost would be. And then we would also, with the command staff, we would also have to figure out what other costs are going to be accrued during this process over the 2 days. Once they come in, discuss these topics for 2 days, they put some bullet points and strategies together, how we would then work through those issues, specifically just those issues, and then they would come back and reevaluate those things at a different point. And I did not see that in here, what that timeline looks like. If it's a month later, 2 months later, I'm not sure. But then there would be a cost contributed to that as well.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm sure there should be a whole bunch of them.
Chief, is this something that would develop into repeated sessions? In other words, we're attacking 3 issues at this time. Would that mean at some future date we'd use the same thing to attack other issues or issues that are uncovered?
We can. I mean, we can use this process as often as we want, but again, I feel that when we're using this process, this is a critical time within our department. They talk about it being an acute issue within the department. The cost, when we talk about $7,000 and probably realistically upwards to $10,000+ once we get everything incorporated, to discuss 2 or 3 matters at hand. If the PFC or the local or the management staff of the department feel that it's warranted, I mean, we can look at that. But I truly believe there are other avenues and other things we could be looking at to facilitate through those things. As an example, the IAFF and the PFFW, Professional Firefighters of Wisconsin, have an upcoming class in October, which is School for Workers, that discusses labor management and labor management issues. And the union has reached out and offered to the command staff here that there's a day we can go to in Madison with them and discuss these exact situations or whatever the topics are, and already got it in the calendar and plan on going. So there are other avenues as well. It just doesn't have to be specifically this avenue.
And from your indication, has the union board really signed on to this idea?
Signed on to the LMA, LMI?
Yeah.
Well,
and I realize you can't speak for them, but do you have a feeling?
I talked with the union president today because I wanted him to make sure that he was aware this was going to be discussed at the PFC. And prior to me discussing this with them, he had stated that he had no knowledge or knew nothing about LMA, LMI. And so with that, again, I don't want to speak on their behalf, but
were they aware of it back in July? Because I thought that of 2021, I thought that was understanding with, at the time, Chief Finn reached out to the union, and pretty much everyone was on board with moving ahead with that, and then we were the ones who put it on hold until we had the new chief.
correct.
Part of the problem is a lot of the players have changed. since we started this process. I'm not convinced that this is gonna be real effective. Do we really need to be digging up these old anonymous letters and rehashing that over and over and over again? I don't think so. Recruitment and retention, we've addressed that, we've talked about it, there's still room to improve, but hiring someone to come in and tell us, I'm not convinced that it's the right avenue to go down, and like Chief said, there's other ways to tackle these issues rather than spending $10,000.
And if the local or the management staff here, or even the PFC feels that we need to have, incorporate something or have some type of exercise or bring someone in, by all means we can. I just don't know if, this is not the only avenue to answer Commissioner Ostrowski's question.
It sounds to me like this is, you know, these problems we're talking about, you know, there's two stakeholders here, the fire department, you know, and then as well as the union. So we would need full, you know, not buy-in, but support of the union, I think, because they would want it, you know, to help resolve these problems too as well, is my initial feeling too. I guess I kind of echo Commissioner Kirschling's feelings too on this. Like,
So-
I'm not really convinced either.
Something that when we first started talking about this, that I had an issue is, it didn't include or incorporate everybody.
Right.
And how effective is it if not everybody's participating?
So
I
Chief,
don't
do
agree.
you have any ideas how to facilitate involvement with everyone, input? Do you have any thoughts on that versus taking 7 people, you know, from management staff and then the local 484 executive board? Do you have any, you know, thoughts on that?
There are a lot of different leadership courses out there, or people we can bring in to facilitate a 2, 3, 4, 5 day, you know, program that we could get a lot more involvement into. And I honestly believe that it would be a lot cheaper and wouldn't be specific to the topics that LMA or what was in this request, but it'd be more generalized to the department, and I think could potentially be a better fit, where maybe these topics that when they put this application together may no longer be the issues at the current Stevens Point Fire Department, and maybe the local says that these are the current issues we're having with the current chief, and maybe this is what we'd like to address, and make it more generalized and dwell down on maybe a few of those topics if that's what we really want to do. But again, this has been put on hold, and I know we're revisiting it and wherever we need to go.
And the 2 to 4 day leadership program, have you looked into that at all? Is it just taking the supervisory positions and they attend the leadership program? Is it in-house that these facilitators come in and get buy-in from the rest of the staff? Do you?
I think we should stick on the one program we're talking about right now and not try and figure out a different program to replace it right now. But what is the value of going back to the LMA, LMI? Is that something that we want to do, or do we need to look another direction? I don't want to get too specific on what that direction is right now, because it's really not on the agenda. This is just to decide what we want to do with this, because it's been sitting out there for over a year with no action, and it was just put on hold. So basically what we're trying to do is either move this forward or put it to bed and move on and try and find something else.
Well, President Moore, I mean, we don't have the updated numbers or costs, and we're not sure if the union's on board with this, because union leadership has changed, as well as the fire department management has changed as well too. So I don't feel like I need to make a decision at all based on the information I have in front of me. That's my personal opinion.
And one thing I was sitting there considering, item 2 of the 3 suggested items really is still involved in legal action yet.
I agree.
And I don't know if we should put an issue like that on the agenda for them to study when in fact it's still in front of the courts.
I would tend to agree with that. I think right now that the faces of the department, the faces of the union leadership have all changed. I don't know that there's a value in continuing down this path. So I will make a motion that we dispose of the LMA, LMI option, and if something else arises that we need to do, we can find that at the time.
But I guess with that motion, I would like to have it, if we're gonna do away with that, is to have the chief explore the other options with leadership programs. Because I think that, the chief sounds like he's definitely aware of it, and it sounds like, he's on board for that, to have something more.
Team building type.
Right, so if we dismiss this, I would like the motion with the chief to come back with, other avenues that he's explored, so that we can, and I agree, we've got a different chief in there now, we've got, different management, things have changed, but I definitely think that exploring, like you've said, an alternative leadership, program is important, so.
I'll accept that amendment. That's fine.
Kirschling will second it then.
Okay. So the motion would be to dispose of the LMA, LMI, that's no longer on the table, and perhaps look into other programs that would be available for team building, leadership building, that may be appropriate for the fire department and the union to work on. Is that acceptable?
Yes.
If we look at it and we go, and Chief goes out there and explores everything, and LMA, LMI is still a good course, I'll entertain it again.
Absolutely.
So back to the drawing board kind of a.
Pretty much,
Okay.
because this is just basically trying to clean up some stuff that's been hanging out there for over a year that needs to be dealt with.
Housekeeping.
Yep,
So terminate this proposal at this time.
correct. If it is one of the options later, then we'll deal with it then.
And with hearing the motion, then what I will do is I will go back and look at potential other programs that we can look at for team building or leadership or moving the department forward, working with both management and the local and getting everyone involved. And I know, talking with Justin Thompson this morning, they are on board with that. It's always important to be moving our department forward, and I agree completely. Just maybe not these specific topics that are, at this point, some are still under legal and some are out of date.
And I think that's what this purpose is that those specific agenda items that were linked to the LMA, LMI are no longer appropriate at this point. So, if there's any other questions about the motion at hand, we have a motion, Kirschling seconded, correct? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 10, Fire Department promotions. Chief, on a happy note.
You noticed he did smile.
Yes, he did, a little bit.
I did smile, yes. Now I gotta find it. All right. All over. But working with Local 484 through the contract negotiations for the past year, since we set out in this endeavor starting last September, and with the restructure of the department this year in 2022, and coming in front of the PFC and having that discussion with the battalion chief's position, we didn't know how this restructure was going to play out with reduction in rank or promotions, or how that was all going to look. Moving forward, and after running 2 Chiefs Assessment Centers earlier this year and a third happening on September 22nd, to also include some retirements in July and August, at this point, with positions open, I am looking to recommend the promotions of firefighter paramedic Shane Westfall to lieutenant, and firefighter paramedic Tom Wastart to motor pump operator.
Chief, by the promotion of Shane, Does that fill all our lieutenant jobs with that promotion?
Currently, yes, at this time, promoting firefighter paramedic Shane Westfall to the lieutenant's position would currently fill all of the lieutenant's positions. And then the appointment of firefighter paramedic Tom Wastart to the MPO position. So that is an appointment by seniority.
Okay.
Questions, comments?
Need a motion on this?
Chief, you need a motion for this, or is that under your authority as chief?
No, I have to bring the under 6213, I have to bring the recommendations forward, and you still have to approve those.
Oh, okay.
Based on that, I would recommend the firefighter paramedic Shane Westfall be promoted to lieutenant and firefighter paramedic Tom Westop to MPO as requested.
Chief, do you need an effective date on this?
Effective date is going to be tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
I'll second that.
9/7.
What's that?
9/7.
9/7, all right.
2/22. Effective date.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Is there any further questions or comments? Effective 9/7/2022. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Item 11, Fire Chief's report.
So first, I'd like to thank firefighter paramedics Jason Pettis and Shane Westfall for getting everybody through the CPR refresher. It's been a little bit more of an involved task this year with, vacation and everything else, and making sure everybody gets their certifications and everybody stays up to date. So just wanted to thank them. On August 15th, Samantha Keshnick started her Recruit Academy training, and she is going to be part of class 2203. Fill the Boot through MDA was August 11th and 12th, and they had an online contributions that continued, so I do not have a total on what they actually raised for the 2 days yet. We did have Chief Zavara just finished up the DCI investigation course that has been hosted here for the last 2 weeks in Stevens Point, and it's unreal what these people go through over a 2-week process, becoming actual state certified fire investigators, working with the ATF and DCI, Mid-State Technical College, and all sorts of other agencies over the 2 weeks. Going through courtroom testimony, finding and figuring out origin and causes, understanding how to write reports. It's a pretty involved course involving a lot of pre-work, but he has completed it, and we look forward to hosting it again next year out at our training facility. Captain Matlin retired as of September 1. We have 3 new state certified aerial operators within our department. Klenowski, Ewers, and Butler all finished their aerial certification courses. All of our personnel have just currently finished their rapid intervention team class through Mid-State Technical College. We brought in instructors and went through the course, and everybody has completed the basic course, and we're looking to do the advanced course in 2023. I will echo what Chief Cuso said about parking lots being well overdue. After they finish his parking lot, they're going to be headed over to our parking lot.
Did you know they're using the used parking lot?
And they'll be actually over by us starting October 3rd, so perfect time to start Fire Prevention Month and have all the kids running in and out of the building. But we'll make do, and we'll take care of that. And lastly, I just wanted to point out one thing, and I know Chief Cuso would echo me. Guns and Hoses. The Guns and Hoses event was canceled due to it being rained out this past month, and so the rain date is going to be October 9th. And again, the gates will open at 1 PM and the event will start at 3 PM, just like prior. But again, that date is going to be October 9th. And that is all I have for my report.
That's to be hosted at Pucco.
Yes,
Buccal Park for Guns and Hoses.
correct.
Make a motion to accept the report and place it on file.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion, we have a second.
Taylor, a second.
Taylor, second. Questions, comments? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Agenda item number 12, President's Report. Two very short things. First is, school is back in session, so please be aware of children and school buses. Follow all the appropriate laws and regulations. And the other thing is, temperatures are cooling off, so people are gonna start using their furnaces and their fireplaces, so make sure your chimneys are cleaned. Make sure you have your furnaces serviced. Please protect your families. Thank you all very much, and that'll be all for today.
All right.
We are adjourned. The magic words.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.